Oh God, it's really coming out down here. Oh, I'm frozen. My hands are like icicles. Get me by that fire. Oh, hello. You're still here. Wow. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Are you warm? You comfortable? Yeah. You got nice hot chocolate and all that. Great. I generally thought after the last one when I talked about Violet Night, I put you off Christmas forever. But I'm glad to see you back. As always, get yourself nice and comfortable. That's it. Pass that pillar over to them. Oh, give them a bit of hot chocolate. They're frozen. Right. So you're here for another story, are you? Well, let me have a look. What else have I got to tell this Christmas season? Let me go through my little Rolodex because I'm that old. Oh, how about this one? A classic from 1994, a movie that came way after, well, way before, shall we say, before I was born, but a movie that I cherish and that I love deeply. And to be honest, it is one of those Christmas movies where I will happily sit and defend and say it is a film that really has the essence of what Christmas is, about the whole idea, belief of joy, of the festive season. And that movie is the 1994 Christmas classic Miracle on 34th Street. But before we get into all of that and more, time for a bit of housekeeping, because we're all frozen solid and we've got to warm up a bit before we get into the nitty gritty. So make sure that you follow me on X or Twitter at Howdy Beans _pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Same if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to leave a follow and to rate the podcast 5 stars. You can also leave comments down below now on episodes. So if you want to leave a comment or feedback or a topic idea or anything like that, or just wish me a Merry Christmas, then by all means drop it down below. And you can also find me on TikTok. I know I'm 27 and I feel a bit old to be on there, but I'm on there. The podcast is on there. So just type in the Howdy Beans podcast and you can check me out there for some exclusive TikTok short reviews. Alrighty then. So I've got a lot of memories of this movie, to be honest. I remember having it on videotape and watching it over and over because it's just one of them things that I think what I love about this movie so much, to tell you the truth, is Richard Attenborough. He just embodies not just the spirit of Santa, but the actual essence of Santa. It's like if you lined up all the actors that have ever played Santa in movies, I'd always I have a feeling I'd gravitate towards Richard Attenborough because he has the look, he has the sound, he has the smile, and most importantly, he has the eyes for it, which I know sounds very weird to say, but Richard Attenborough has these eyes that just it says safe, it says secure, it says welcoming. There's a lot of the eyes are old but young. You can tell that he's seen a lot and done a lot with his eyes, and I think that's why he was so good in like Jurassic Park and other movies that he was in, because he was just so good as an actor that he had such a way with his eyes that you just would draw in. Like, again, I'm going off topic here, but The Great Escape, when he was in The Great Escape, again, whenever he'd have moments, you'd ever feel when he was happy or you'd feel when he was sad, or you could realize, oh God, they've buggered it, they're going to get caught, and he was one of the people that got caught. And it's one of those where, like, in my opinion anyway, Richard Attenborough is one of the best versions of Santa on sort of modern TV and modern movies, even though the film's not modern. But you know what I'm trying to say. He's just so warm, and I think that's what I loved about it so much when I was younger, watching it on videotape, was the fact that he just felt so much like Santa. Like Tim Allen went in the Santa Claus movie. Like, Tim Allen's good, but even when he had the beard on, I was like, no, that's still Tim Allen, that's still Buzz. I don't see him as anything else. Whereas like Richard Attenborough in this, I didn't see him as John Hammond from Jurassic Park, even though I knew it was. I'd be like, oh no, that's Santa. And I believe that's Santa. And again, that's kind of the point of the story, really, is the fact of this whole idea of believing that this man who's Kris Kringle, who says he's Santa, he actually is Santa. And even if he is or it isn't, it doesn't matter. It's that fact of what you're actually truly fighting about is the fact of belief, and that as the movie goes into "In God We Trust" and stuff like that. Like, I love the movie, and I love the characters, and it's just one of those where it's like, I wanted to do this last year, but this was like Violet Night. This is another one of them movies that sadly kind of got outvoted. I can't remember what actually outdid this one, to be honest, but this one got outvoted, sadly. But I did say anything that didn't get done last year, it's getting done this year. So I'm glad I can finally talk about Miracle on 34th Street, one of my favorite Christmas movies. So it's going to be an absolute joy. As for the movie synopsis, so I actually have two synopsises. Because normally with like a synopsis, I would just focus on one. But obviously this movie's been around, and there's been a lot of different versions of this movie like throughout the years, really. And I read the sort of original from the black and white version from the 1940s, which is a good film, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's actually really, really good, the black and white version. And I read that. I thought, that's really interesting. So I actually Googled what the 1994 version was. And it's good, but it doesn't really explain what's going on in terms of the story. Because I'll read them both, and you can kind of decide for yourself. I think the original sounds better the way it's described, but we will see. So this is the 1994 movie synopsis, right? So 6-year-old Susan Walker is skeptical of the Christmas myth surrounding Santa Claus, a trait she perhaps learned from her mother, Dory. When asked with hiring the Santa who will pose with kids at Marcy's, Dory enlists a man with the curious name of Kris Kringle, who claims to be Santa himself. His assertions are met with scoffs and threats of insualization or institutionalization, because I'm dyslexic, that was a hard word to say. But a young lawyer, along with Susan and Dory, comes to his defense. So that is sort of the synopsis for the new movie, which doesn't really give you, says a lot. It just facts of like, there's an old guy who comes in, is hired to play Santa. He says he is Santa. People think he's a bit crazy, so that, they take him to court to prove that he is. It doesn't really explain anything. It doesn't really feel Christmassy. It doesn't feel like it doesn't, like I say, it doesn't say what the movie's about, because there's a lot more to this movie and this story than just that. So it doesn't really explain it. Now, this is the original one from the 1940s. It goes as follows, right? So it says, in this Christmas classic, an old man going by the name of Kris Kringle fills in for an intoxicated Santa in Macy's annual Thanksgiving Day parade. Kringle proves to be such a hit that he is soon appearing regularly at the chain's main store in Midtown Manhattan. When Kringle surprises customers and employees alike by claiming that he really is Santa Claus, it leads to a court case to determine his mental health and, more importantly, his authenticity. That has a lot more explanation of what's going on, because it sets up the idea of, you've got this man who fills in for this other person who pretends to be Santa. He becomes such a hit with loads of people. They hire him. He does loads of appearances. He's great with the kids. But because he's saying he says that he is Santa, a lot of people sort of are not really sure about his mental health, so they take him to court to prove that he's authenticity. And to me, that says a lot more, because it's a fact of, it deals a lot more with the idea of belief, not just that he's crazy. It's the fact of, no, he says he's Santa. Let's go see if it's actually true, if it's real. So I just wanted to sort of compare them, because it's interesting how both synopses are a bit different. As for the cast, so you have Richard Attenborough as Kris Kringle, who's brilliant. Elizabeth Perkins as, I say Dorothy, or is it Dorey? Dorey. I'm just going to say Dorothy. I know it's not, but it's just easier for me being dyslexic. Dorothy Walker. Dylan McDermott as Dylan Bedford. J.T. Walsh as Ed Collins. James Remar as Jack Duff. Jane Levies as Alberta Leonard. Simon Jones as Shellhammer, and William Winsdom as C.F. Cole, Mara Wilson as Susan Walker, and Robert Prosky as Judge Harper. And that is your cast of this movie. As for the production, it goes as follows. So let me find my place here. So in November 1993, it was announced John Hughes, the incredible sort of cult status director, would be writing and producing a remake of Miracle on 34th Street for 20th Century Studios for release during the 1994 holiday season. Voicing his motivations for the remake, Hughes stated he wanted to explore the concept of Kris Kringle coming back to modern times while also carefully handling such a cherished classic. Later that month, Les Mayfield was hired to direct the film. Fox had previously sought out Mayfield to direct John Hughes' produced Baby's Day Out. Brilliant movie. I've got to cover it one day. But due to a contact with Disney, wasn't able to accept. According to Richard Attenborough, Mara Wilson's character of Susan Walker was written as a boy in Hughes' initial draft. Much of the filming took place in Chicago, which Hughes movies mostly do anyway. Wilson recalled that she could relate to her character's dilemma over not believing in Santa Claus because she was Jewish and also did not believe in the Tooth Fairy at the time. The New York City-based Macy's department store, which was featured in the original film, declined any involvement with this remake, saying, "We feel the original stands on its own and could not be improved upon." Well, that's fair enough. Despite the fact that Macy's allowed their name to be used in prior television remakes in 1955, 1959, and 1973, this led to the production creating the fictitious Coles as its replacement, which, despite the name change, was analogues to Macy's, including filming the Coles Parade at 77th Street and Central West, which is the starting point for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and 34th Street only has one major department store, Macy's. Gimbals has ceased operations in 1987, hence it was replaced by the fictional Shoppers Express. And that's all I could find on the production of the movie. But yeah, I am very much excited for this one. Like I said, it's a movie to me that just screams Christmas, that screams holidays. You know, it's a film about belief. You know, even me at like the age of 27, I know I'm going to sound crazy for this, but I love the idea of wanting to believe in Santa. Because why not? Because, like, not to get all sort of depressing and put a damper on things, because it's meant to be like, you know, very happy and positive and like holiday spirit. But the way the world is at the moment, and the way the world has always been in terms of being very negative and very sort of like, you have to grow up, you have to be, you put all that stuff in your childhood, you've got to grow up. You know, why not? Why not have the fun to believe that Santa does exist, that the Tooth Fairy exists, or that the Easter Bunny exists, or goes as far as like dragons once existed, and fairies and ogres. Like, yes, I know it sounds silly to say, but why not? Because it just makes life more fun and interesting, if you ask me. You know, yeah, they don't exist anymore, but maybe they existed one day, like the idea of Bigfoot. You know, maybe one day Bigfoot did exist. It doesn't exist anymore. You know, so I feel like those sort of people who go, "Oh no, it's not real. It's not for the kids." Like, no, don't lose that spirit, because as soon as you lose that spirit, as soon as you lose that spark, as Robin Williams used to say, then what have you got left in life, really? And I choose to keep that spark. I choose to keep that belief that, yeah, you know, maybe there is a big jolly fat man who goes around the earth and delivers all the presents. Maybe there isn't. It doesn't matter. It's a lovely thing to think about, and it's wonderful. And that's kind of the whole point of this movie. And again, I'll get into more of it when we get into the actual review itself. But I love this movie for that idea, that concept of like, it's about belief. And it's about believing. It doesn't matter who you are, how old you are. It's the fact of everybody has a belief in something. It's just why are some things are allowed to be believed in when you're a child, but not when you're an adult. But other things are. You know what I mean? And I love that, and it's great. So I look forward to getting into it, or when we get into the review. I'm going to go off now, keep myself warm, go watch Miracle on 34th Street, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about a absolute wonderful, precious movie. So until then, I will see you all very soon. And welcome back, everybody. I do apologize if my voice sounds a bit weird. Since reviewing Violent Night, I think I've come down with a cold. Hopefully it's that sexy phlegm sort of cold, but time will tell. So if I sound a bit groggy, if I sound a bit off, that's why. But I've just not long finished watching on Miracle 34th Street, and it's a nice departure going from watching Violent Night to seeing a Santa Claus that's brutal, that's, you know, still very much lovable and wonderful in sort of the version that David Harbour played, and are still going about belief and stuff like that, to going to a movie where this version is the definite article, you know, of Santa Claus. You know, whenever you think of Santa Claus, you think of this version of Santa Claus. It's the same with Doctor Who. Whenever you think of Doctor Who, you think of mostly either David Tennant or Tom Baker as the definite article of what you think the Doctor or who the Doctor is. So it's a wonderful contrast. But what I found was interesting, and unintentionally, because I didn't plan to do two Santa-focused films back to back. But the fun unintentional thing that I found was the idea of belief. Because whenever you talk about Santa, it's always that idea of seeing is not believing. This idea that you either believe in Santa or you don't. And again, I made my point pretty clear in the last episode in Violent Night, what I believe and what I choose to believe. I just thought it was a wonderful sort of comparison, having, even though the two movies are drastically different from each other, they still have that underlining concept of Christmas, really, which is that idea of faith and belief. And that's what I love about this movie so much. I love the art style. I love sort of the production design. I love the fact of, even though it's set in the 90s, it still has a very 40s, 50s sort of feel to it, because the original came out in 1947. Black and white movie. Granted, I haven't seen the original in years. I haven't. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and I think a rewatch is in order. And I might do a review of it over on TikTok. So just make sure you follow me on TikTok if you want to see that short review. But it's wonderful watching this movie, and it's like a time capsule of like, it's artful. It is beautiful. It is stunning. The casting is great. The acting is wonderful as well. The hope and the meaning is so raw and honest and organic. It's not forced, because it is a time of before smartphones and before technology was starting to really take over, where kids still played with toys, so it was still very much pure and innocent. And then they have sort of everybody seems to dress very much old-fashioned as well. So even though it's the 90s, it still feels quite classical, feels quite old. Again, the way that the main character are lit, when you have the scenes with Elizabeth Perkins, when her main character, whenever she's on screen, the way she's lit with the smoky eyes, and that the light is shining on her face, so you focus on her face, you focus on her eyes, especially how old cinema, that's how the movies used to be shot, that the main characters' faces had a light shine on them, so it looked like they were glowing. And I love that. That's what I love about old movies. I love that art style. And as I was saying in the introduction to this one, what I love about this movie is the fact of, when I see Richard Attenborough as Santa, I believe. Like I said, I do believe in Santa, or I love to believe in the idea that there is somebody like Santa, because it's a wonderful thought. It just makes Christmas more wonderful, and it makes life more wonderful and then interesting and whimsical. Because life is whimsical at the end of the day. If you really want to break it down to brass tacks, we don't know what consciousness. We don't understand what life is. Life is a miracle. Every single day is a gift. That's why they call it the present. You know what I mean? So to take away that whimsy, that wonder, that spark, that hope, that joy of life, to take little things like Santa doesn't exist, and the Tooth Fairy doesn't exist, and dragons, and Arthur and the knights of the Round Table, and Merlin and magic and all this wonderful things, to take that away from you at a young age and say no, grow up now, is a bit cruel. It's a bit mean. And I think you should just allow children and people to believe whatever they want to believe, for as long as they want to believe it. If it makes them feel better, makes them happy, then that's a wonderful thing. And that's what this movie is really about. I like to think of this movie is in two parts. The first part of this movie is Santa, is about the idea of Kris Kringle, this guy that he says he's Kris Kringle. Whether he is or he isn't, he brings hope, he brings joy. One of my favorite scenes of this movie, which actually is a scene that was completely unplanned. Like, it was a surprise on the little girl's face. But when Kris Kringle, when he's sitting in the chair, and the young girl comes up and he goes, "How are you, darling?" And the mother comes in and he goes, "Oh, don't worry, you don't have to do that. She's deaf. She just wanted to see you." And she's sitting there, a little smile on her face, but you can tell in this little sort of altercation that again, I don't live with deafness. I don't really know anybody really who is properly deaf. I have friends who struggle with their hearing, but I don't know anybody who is fully deaf. But you can see in this little girl's face that she's only young, but she's lived longer than she is. That she's older than she is because she's had to grow up quicker because of her disability. So she has that look on her face that she just wanted to come see Santa, and then not expecting anything, and then to have Richard Attenborough, Kris Kringle, just start signing, saying you are beautiful. What's your name? Her name, and then that smile on her face, like, oh my god, I can speak to Santa. Santa can speak to me. She's never had that before in her life, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I won't lie, I'm getting emotional now, and it makes me sort of tear up when I watch the scene. There's many moments in this film that make me tear up, to be honest, because it's just wonderful. And he's talking to her, and she's telling him what she wants. You can see in her eyes that she wasn't expecting it. It was genuine surprise, and that's a core memory that's been made for that young girl now, that young girl will forever remember the day that she met Santa. Her belief in Santa has now grew tenfold. So I would wholeheartedly believe that when she grew up to be a young lady, to a woman and to an old lady, that that would live for her forever, that she'll always have a belief in Santa, because only Santa would be able to talk to her the way that she can hear, she can understand. And that's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And the way that the mother leans down and says thank you, you can hear it in the mom's voice. She's getting choked up, and it's a quick scene. It's a very, very quick scene. And the mother's thank you, and again, it's a cool moment for the mother, because it's that struggle because we forget about the parents in these sort of things. We forget about the parents have got to deal with. You forget about what the child is struggling with, and you forget about what the parents are struggling with. So the parent being able to have that moment and have that memory with their sort of child that has this deaf condition, and then to be able to find somebody who can talk to her, and it being Santa, it's a wonderful thing. And you can see in Kris Kringle's eyes, you can see it in Richard Attenborough's eyes, that he's starting to tear up, and you can realize this is why he does it. This is why he is Santa. And it's very honourable. And again, this is to me is why I said that Richard Attenborough is the definite article. Whenever I think of Santa Claus, I think of Richard Attenborough, because he just, in this whole movie, he just envelops the idea of what Santa is, who Santa is, what Kris Kringle is and does. Kris Kringle is a symbol. And there's a quote in this movie that I love, and it's one that I always come back to, and it's one that I wanted to quote. So I'm going to read it as a script. So Kris Kringle goes, you think I'm a fraud, don't you? Dorothy Walker says, she goes, fraud is a bit too strong of a word, Kris, but you don't believe in me. Dorothy, I believe that Christmas is for children. Kris Kringle, well, your daughter doesn't believe in me either. Dorothy, I don't think that there's any harm in not believing in a figure that many do acknowledge to be a fiction. Kris, oh, but there is. I'm not just a whimsical figure who wears a charming suit and affects a joy of demeanor. I'm a symbol. I'm a symbol of the human ability to be able to suppress the selfish and hateful tendencies that rule the majority part of our lives. If you can't believe, if you can't accept that anything on faith, then you're doomed for a life dominated by doubt. And that's a beautiful quote, but it's so a true quote, because this is one of the things that we miss at Christmas. This is one of the many things that has gotten lost into the generations. And again, I made point of it in the last episode as well, is the fact of human greed, human ego is a very deplorable thing, but it's also a very human thing. And the problem is that, humans are wonderful. We are so full of possibility, but we are still very self-centered. And it's only gotten worse with technology. It's only gotten worse with greed and money and the way the world is now. The way other humans have decided the way that the world should work and money should work and stuff like that. And I don't blame people for it, because not everybody is in such a situation where they're well off. For a lot of people, I was talking to my mom today. For a lot of people, Christmas is a hard time of the year. It's a difficult time of the year. I know a lot of people that don't like Christmas because it's bad memories, or it's that idea, memories of difficulty, of hardship, of when struggling when they were younger and stuff like that. And people now, with kids, are struggling to get their kids anything for Christmas, or pay for electric, or pay for food, or stuff like that. And with me and what I do as for a living, for my job, I see it all the time. Every Christmas, I see people on the sort of lowest rung, struggling. And it breaks your heart. It really does. And I try my best every Christmas, and the team that I work with, to help people and make sure that they have the best Christmas as possibly as they can do. And it's not an easy thing, but we try our best. And it's incredibly sad, but it's one of them things of like, this whole thing with the greed and the ego, the very me, I, is kind of what ruins Christmas. Is kind of what ruins the idea of Santa, because it's that idea of, well, why should I believe that Santa exists when there's a package under the tree that says Amazon, or eBay or Vinted or any of these other sort of places? Why should I believe that Santa exists if I know that there's a delivery man at the door who's going to deliver my packages from Amazon or whatever? It's that corporate idea of it's that greed. It's that thing of like, well, what's ruined the idea of Christmas, which is at its core, really, what Christmas is all about, is love, friendship, kindness, innocence, humans coming together to share this common love, this common joy of just spreading love, and again, like I said, joy to each other, for gift giving. And it's not about what the gift is; it's about the thought of the gift. Like I've always said to friends of mine, I don't care what you get me. What I care is about the thought that goes into it. And some of the best gifts I've gotten are some of the most basic. Most people wouldn't even look at it twice. Basic, cheap gifts, because it's not how much it is. It's not about what it is. It's about the thought that's gone into it. I had a friend of mine who, I won't go into full details, but they were struggling at Christmas. And I told them multiple times, you don't need to get me anything for Christmas. But they did. And what they got me was a Christmas card. And inside the Christmas card was a handmade, and it's going to make me tear up, to be honest, because it's a beautiful gift. It's a handmade bookmark. No, it's basic, it's simple, but it doesn't matter. I cried when I saw it, and I'm getting emotional talking about it now, because it's a thought that counts. They know how much I love books. They know how much I love reading, right? So they've gone out their way to not only spend time and effort making a beautiful, wonderful bookmark, but they've also personalized it. And they've made it themselves. And they've gone in the effort to make a Christmas card, go to the post office, get a stamp, then go to a post box, post it, mail it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it gets to me. That's all I want of people, is time and effort. That to me, that's more valuable than anything else, is your time. Time is precious. That's one thing as humans. Sorry, getting emotional. That's one thing as humans we forget, is time. Because we think we have a lot of it when we don't. So when somebody has spent a lot of time into you personally, to me, that's incredible. That's an honor that I can never return, apart from giving you my time back. You know what I mean? So that's like that. To me, that's the idea of Christmas. It's somebody giving the time and effort and passion to somebody else, whether it be a sort of form of love in terms of a hug, or time in terms of a conversation, or it's food, or it's a gift. It's the thought that counts. It's not just the fact of they went to the shop and they bought me a cheap aftershave from Avon or something like that. It's the fact that they've put thought into it. That's what matters the most. And I think that's what we've forgotten many times. It's just the fact of again, it comes back to the idea of belief in Santa, that belief in Christmas, that belief in each other, in the people that we love, and that we come together and that we spread joy. And again, this is one of those things that this movie sort of brings to me, is this idea of Christmas, so idea of joy. And that's the first half of the movie. Then you have the second half, which is the courtroom drama. And the second half of the movie, Kris Kringle, he's been baited into attacking somebody because they were saying really horrible, heinous, deplorable things about that he's a fraud, that why he's doing it to be Santa. And like anybody, where like Santa is still a being, that if anybody's pushed enough, they're going to snap. And sadly, he did, and he attacked the man with the cane. And like I think David, his name is. Let me get his name now. Brian, sorry. As Brian says in the movie, because Chris Kringle, he's in sort of the mental sort of hospital, and he says, "No, I can't. Like, I basically lied on my sanity tests because I have disdained the name of Santa. That I've disdained the name, the idea of Santa. That I did something deplorable." And Brian goes to him like, "You didn't. If anything, you defended not just your honor, but the honor and the concept of Santa for all children around the world. That person was saying the bad part, the bad things about Santa that are abhorrent and wrong, and you defended that. That's horrible. That's not bad. That's good." And then when Brian says he's going to defend him, he's like, "Look, I'm going to defend him." And as the courtroom sort of drama is going on, you've got the two different lawyers. And you've got the one lawyer who's basically, his name's Ed Collins. He's basically trying to say that, this man is not safe. We're not here to argue that the existence of Santa. We're to argue with that man's sanity. That man over there says he's Chris Kringle. He's a danger as a parent and as a person of this city of New York, that man is a danger and that he should be locked away for his own good and the good of the children and everybody else. And then Brian makes the argument of us like, well, what we're really doing here is the belief. It's not just the fact of is that man Chris Kringle or not. It's the fact of Santa, the idea of faith. And what I love about the end of this movie, after all the arguments that they make, it still comes down to a $1 bill. And again, we don't have it here in the UK. But in America, on the $1 bill, I'm sure it's on the other dollar bills as well, but they use a $1 bill for this film. On the $1 bill, it says, "In God we trust." And the judge basically states of us like, the people of this nation, of this country, all come together, and the Treasury and the President and everybody else and the Founding Fathers, without need of proof that there is a God, in pure belief alone, put their faith into God, into the currency, and put "In God we trust" on the currency, so that we always believe that what we are doing when we sort of hand the money over is in good faith. That I'm going to give you $1 and I'm going to get $1 worth of my money back in faith. This is why I do this. And you don't need any proof of that. It's just the fact of "In God we trust." And that's what it comes down to. And that's the sort of the ending of this movie, really. It's not the fact of if he is Chris Kringle or not. It's the fact of he believes it, I believe it, the state, we all believe the fact of we don't need proof that, Chris Kringle or Santa Claus exists. It's that we believe that these things do. And that's what this movie's about, really, at the end of the day. It's faith. It's the idea of whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, or believe in Santa, or you believe in dragons, or you believe in Bigfoot, or you believe that aliens exist or ghosts exist or whatever. No matter what it is, I don't judge anybody whatever they believe. As long as they're happy and they're not hurting anybody, it doesn't matter in the slightest to me. But that's what it's all down to. It's that idea of belief, that idea of faith. And I love that because it's a very powerful thing. It's a very human thing at the end of the day. This idea that, we kept bring up the idea of Santa Claus, this idea that there's a magical being that travels the world and brings joy to children, brings joy to families. It's a wonderful thing. It really is. He's a saint, Saint Nicholas. He is a noted saint of the church and most religions, to be honest, and every religion around the world has a different name for him, for them. There are different ideas, different concepts, but they all basically work in the same way. So yeah, we all believe. Some people just choose not to. But again, I come back to that quote that I said earlier, the fact of if you can't believe, if you can't accept anything on faith, then you're doomed for a life dominated by doubt. And I think that's just a good way of ending things, really, is the fact of, whether you choose to believe or not, if you just live a life without belief or faith, then you're doomed to doubt everything. And that's the thing about this movie. And that's the thing about the characters, is the fact of, you've got the two sort of main characters. You've got Elizabeth Perkins' character, and you have the little girl as well. You have these two, Susan. So you've got Susan and Dorothy. You've got mother and daughter. The mother got pregnant. The dad left. She's lost all faith in everything really. She's like, I've got to be the adult, I've got to grow up, and I've got to be a beacon for my daughter. Susan follows the mom's sort of way. She's been brought up by her mother, so again, she has to. It's like talking to a 60-year-old. She's very grown up. She doubts everything. Whereas a young girl, a young child, shouldn't doubt everything. A young child should believe everything. Everything is real. Anything is possible. You know, because you don't know any better. But even the adult should believe this as well. But I feel like that's another conversation entirely. But and as this movie goes on, they lose that doubt, and the facade starts to disappear, and they start to believe. And you could say they believe in Santa. You can say they believe in miracles. You can say they just decide to stop doubting and start accepting. It's many things you could say, but really what it is at the end of the movie really is this the fact of they have found a new life in terms of hope, in terms of a new family, where Brian and Dorothy get together and they're happy. Susan gets what she wants. She gets a dad. She gets a family, and she's hopefully potentially has a younger brother on the way. She has the house she always dreamed of. Is it Kris Kringle who gives them that, or is it just by chance? Is it just a miracle? Is it just coincidence? It doesn't matter. It's the wonderful, magical moments of life that you never know what's going to happen. You never know it's going to be around the corner. Life is magical. You've just got to look for it. If you go through your life with blinders on and you don't look for the magic, you will never see it. It will never exist because you're not open to it. But if you're open to it, if you're open to believe, if you're open to faith, if you're open to manifestation or anything like that, if you're open and willing to accept it, you will see it everywhere you go. Positivity, you will see it everywhere if you're willing to accept positivity into your heart, if you're willing to accept love into your heart. Again, I can go on all day, every day, but it's the same answer each time. You've got to be willing to accept that belief, that magic, that hope in Christmas, in love, in joy, whatever it is. As long as you can do that, really, that you will be able to go through this life a lot more happier, a lot more pleasant, a lot more whimsy and wonderful, and see the joys of life. I know it's not easy, and for some people it's difficult, for multiple reasons. But Christmas is a wonderful time, and life is a wonderful thing. And I love this movie a lot because it's that reminder of belief, whether it be Santa or not. This idea of just if you believe in something, if you have faith in something, life is going to be better and happier and more positive for you. And I sort of absolutely I love that. I really do. So yeah, that's my thoughts really on Miracle on 34th Street. It's a wonderful Christmas film, and it's one that I watch every year, and it's one I've seen since I was younger, and it's one that I still watch now, and it's going to be one that I watch, forever. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I know there are people out there who say the original's better. Again, I can't comment on that because I haven't seen it in a very, very long time, so I don't remember it as much, or at least probably the better word to say is I don't think of it as fondly as I do this one. But I will look into it, and I'll probably do a small review of it over on my TikTok at Howdy Beans, the Howdy Beans podcast on TikTok. So if you want to hear that, then by all means follow me there. But yeah, I just think it's a wonderful film. It's a really wonderful film about Christmas, about Santa, about belief. And that's one thing in this world currently we are sorely lacking. And if any time at Christmas that sort of light candle can be relit, it's now. And it's with a movie like this. And it's one of the reasons why I love Christmas so much. I really do. I love Halloween. I love Easter. I even so far I like Bonfire Night, really, which I know is a very British holiday. But my favorite time of the year is Christmas, and it always will be. And I will never not be sorry for that. It's just a wonderful time of the year, especially if you hold it in your heart and you enjoy it to its fullest and to its original true meaning. It's a very wonderful time of the year. Anyway, time to do a bit of trivia before we end things. So, the director of photography decided to put a light above each of the actors and actresses' heads during all of the shots to give a distinct glow behind them, as this was popular in the 1940s, as I mentioned earlier. This helped give a warm feel to the remake of a classic movie, but more importantly, it was combined with deliberately um, anachronistic anachronistic, I think is the right word, costumes and camera angles, which paid homage to the 1940s version. I think that word means in terms of colors, in terms of like the way that it looks. I think I don't know. It's not an easy word. Anachronistic. Anyway, that word, which it pays off. Like I said, that's one of the things I love about this movie. Is just I love how it's shot, and I wish that more films would shoot this way. Like there's a very distinct way that movies were shot back in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and like the early 2000s. But like the way movies are shot now, they all look and feel the same. Every movie, no matter what the genre, they all look the same and they all feel the same, because they all seem to be shot identically. Whereas like this movie feels new but feels old. It feels modern but feels classic. And I love that. It really goes to sort of the theme and the style of the movie, which I love. In its original theatre release, 20th Century Fox offered a full refund to any viewer who didn't enjoy the movie. Approximately 1,500 tickets were refunded to the studio. Now, is that the fact that people didn't enjoy it? Or was that the fact they knew that 21st Century Fox offered a full refund so that you could go see the movie, whether you liked it or not, and still get your money back? Because I know a lot of people out there who would go out and watch something and didn't know if they enjoyed it or not, and found out they could get their money back would. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like that's a good bit of trivia, but I would question how many of those 1,500 people genuinely didn't enjoy it or just knew that they could get their money back if they liked it or not. Just saying. Actress Elizabeth Perkins and cinematographer Julio Macat met on the set and later got married in 2000. Alan Greenman, the doorman in this movie, played Alfred in Miracle on 34th Street in 1947. So that's a bit of a cameo there. Do I have any more? Do I have any more bits of trivia? Oh, I do. So Brian Bedford is the only main character whose name differs completely from the original of the 1947 movie. Fred Gailey, played by John Payne, his new name is taken from Bedford Falls, which is the name of the town where It's a Wonderful Life in 1946 is set. Miss Walker's first name was slightly altered from Doris to Dory. According to an interview with Adam McKay, 20th Century Fox had planned to give this movie a small 800 screen release until it received a perfect 100% test screening score. Instilled with confidence, the studio tripled the marketing budget and gave it a wider release, but the strategy backfired when it collapsed in the crowded 1994 holiday movie slate, notably compared to another more successful Santa Claus themed movie, Disney's The Santa Claus from 1994. McKay attributed its failure to its plot depicting bureaucracy out to disapproval sorry, I'm ill. Do apologize. Bureaucracy out to disprove the existence of Santa Claus, joking that no one's going to say Santa Claus sucks. Sorry about that there. You know, my tongue got completely tied. My dyslexia kicked in and was like, no, we're not saying that word again. But so that's all I've got for trivia for you today. I do apologize for the noises, hopefully it wasn't too jarring for anybody wearing headphones. But yeah, I do really, really enjoyed this movie, and I do recommend people to watch it this holiday season. It does mean a lot to me, and it's a very wonderful, beautiful Christmas film. And like I said, Richard Attenborough is a masterclass actor. And to me, of all the roles that he had done, and he was brilliant in The Great Escape. But all the roles that he's done, I think for me, and I know some people would say John Hammond from Jurassic Park, and I understand why. But honestly, for me, I think the role I'll always remember him for is playing Kris Kringle in this film. Honestly. because to me, he is the definite article of who Santa is, of how Santa looks, how Santa sounds, how Santa acts. You know, the idea when he's sitting in the chair and he's talking to Susan, and he's speaking in loads of different languages. He knows sign language. You know, he he's so full of knowledge and he's so wise. It reminds me of Christopher Lee, Sir Christopher Lee. You know, that man was the sort of shall we say blueprint for James Bond. So Arthur Conan Doyle based James Bond off Sir Christopher Lee. And the reason that is, if that you actually look into it, the man was a spy. He knew how to use hand-to-hand combat. He knew how to use swords. The man had to fire guns, all types of weaponry. The man could speak multiple different languages. He was multi-talented and all this kind of jazz. And I've gone off a bit of a tangent there, but like that guy was what you think of as like when you've realised what Sir Christopher Lee could do, and he was qualified in, and you realise that this guy was the living, breathing embodiment of James Bond. It's that same thing with this, is the fact that when you realise and you see in this movie all the different languages and all the different things that Richard Attenborough knew how to do, for me, it adds to that belief of like, this guy was Santa. Like he acted on the side as Richard Attenborough, but at Christmas time, he was Santa. Whether it be true or not, it doesn't matter. Again, it comes down to the idea of belief, of that wonder of like, yes, I believe this man to be Santa, to be Kris Kringle. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So yeah, Miracle on 34th Street, the 1994 movie, to me will be forever ingrained in my brain of that is the archetype pinnacle version of Santa. And to this day, nothing is beating it, and nothing probably ever will, to be honest. So yeah, I love this movie. I think it's wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope you've all enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned, because I've got more Christmas goodies coming your way, a lot more Christmas surprises for you to unwrap and stuff like that. So make sure you keep warm. Make sure you keep that hot chocolate topped with all the cream and marshmallows, and that you keep love in your heart and joy. And I will hopefully see you very soon for another episode this Christmas. I've been your host, Luke the Elder Beam. It's been absolute wonderful joy and pleasure as always. Thank you very much for listening. And as always, bye-bye.